Lavrentiy Beria in 22 minutes. Welcome to a journey through the shadows of history where power, paranoia, and purges shape the fate of millions. Today, we unravel the enigmatic tale of Lavrentiy Beria, Stalin's iron-fisted enforcer whose cunning and cruelty left an indelible mark on the Soviet Union. From the back alleys of Georgian politics to the echelons of the NKVD, we'll explore how Beria's relentless pursuit of power played a pivotal role in some of history's most chilling chapters. If you're ready to dive deep into the dark labyrinth of espionage, betrayal, and ruthless ambition, hit that like button, subscribe, and join us as we uncover the secrets of one of the most feared men in the Soviet regime. This is not just a story, it's a warning from the past. Let's begin. Born on March 17th, 1899, in Merkulyi, Georgia, then part of the Russian Empire, Beria's life story unfolds like a dramatic play set against the backdrop of tumultuous times. His birthplace in the Abkhazia region, close to the Black Sea coast, was a cradle of Romano-Byzantine culture, distinct from the neighboring areas influenced by Slavic, Russo-Turkish, and Persian cultures. Beria hailed from a landowning family of Mingrelian ethnic origin. His father, Pavel Huhayevich Beria, and mother, Marta Jakeli, were figures deeply embedded in the regional aristocracy and the Georgian Orthodox Church. The young Beria grew up in a household where his mother, a pious woman with strong religious ties, sought to instill faith in her children. Despite this, Beria's life would take a markedly different path. Known in his youth for his keen intellect and a penchant for solving mysteries, earning him the nickname Detective, Beria's academic pursuits in mathematics and natural sciences hinted at a promising future. However, his true calling seemed to lie in the realm of politics and power. His involvement with the Bolshevik cause in 1917 marked the beginning of a storied political career, coinciding with the seismic shifts of the Russian Revolution and the eventual collapse of the Russian Empire. Beria's life story is intricately woven into the fabric of a changing world, where the fall of Tsar Nicholas II and the upheaval of World War I set the stage for a new order. His journey from a student of mechanical construction to a political figure highlights the era's complexity and the diverse cultural and political landscape of early 20th century Georgia and Russia. In the swirling maelstrom of post-revolutionary Eastern Europe, Georgia found itself at a crossroads, fighting for its autonomy amidst the collapse of empires and the birth of new nation-states. After severing ties with Lenin's burgeoning regime, Georgia faced threats from regional powers, including a resurgent Turkey in the aftermath of the Ottoman Empire's dissolution. This precarious situation led to the short-lived alliance of the Transcaucasian Democratic Federative Republic, a union with Azerbaijan and Armenia that crumbled under the weight of internal discord. Despite these challenges, Georgia declared its independence on May 26, 1918, marking a renaissance of national sovereignty after over a century under imperial rule. The Social Democratic Mensheviks, steering the country's destiny, aimed to carve a distinct path for Georgia, one divergent from the tumultuous Bolshevik Revolution unfurling in Russia. Their vision was one of land reform and national identity preservation, a beacon of hope in a region shadowed by uncertainty. However, the dream of a lasting Georgian independence was short-lived. Despite initial Russian recognition, the relentless tide of Soviet expansionism under the directive of Lenin and Stalin, both with Georgian roots, engulfed the nascent republic. In 1921, Georgia was reincorporated into the Soviet fold, this time as the Georgian Soviet Socialist Republic, effectively becoming a satellite of Moscow's grand design. Amidst this turbulent backdrop, Lavrentiy Beria's rise to prominence began to take shape. Despite not initially sharing the Marxist-Leninist ideology of his future compatriots, Beria's Georgian heritage and subsequent support of Stalin's regime elevated his status within the Soviet hierarchy. His early career in the security services of the Azerbaijan Democratic Republic laid the groundwork for a life dedicated to surveillance and political maneuvering. As the fate of nations was forged and reforged in the crucible of revolution and civil war, Beria's path intersected with the seismic shifts of his era. From a student in the throes of political upheaval to an operative in the intricate web of Soviet intelligence, his journey was emblematic of the complex interplay of personal ambition and historical forces. Yet, as the Red Army consolidated its grip on the Transcaucasian region and the Bolsheviks sought to extinguish the last embers of opposition within Georgia, Beria's role in this grand historical narrative became ever more pronounced. From the shadowy corridors of intelligence to the highest echelons of Soviet power, his life story is a testament to the volatile era that reshaped the destinies of nations and individuals alike. In the labyrinthine world of early Soviet politics, Lavrentiy Beria's journey continued to twist and turn with the tumultuous tides of the era. His narrow escape from execution, facilitated by the support of his contemporaries at the Bolshevik Central Committee of Azerbaijan, marked a pivotal moment in his life. This event, coupled with his incarceration on spying charges, might have ironically bolstered his standing within the party, demonstrating a resilience and cunning that would come to define his career. While imprisoned, Beria's personal life took a dramatic turn as he formed a bond with Nina Gegechkori, his cellmate's niece. This relationship would lead to an impromptu elopement, a daring escape from the clutches of a regime that had nearly claimed his life. Yet this respite was short-lived, as Beria found himself once again entangled in the web of espionage and political intrigue, leading to another arrest and a sentence of exile. Despite being ordered to leave Georgia, Beria remained, adopting a secret identity and working for the Soviet embassy. This audacious move led to his recapture and a subsequent hunger strike by him and his fellow political prisoners, an act that ultimately resulted in his deportation to Baku. Back in Azerbaijan, Beria briefly resumed his studies in architecture before quickly shifting back to the political sphere, taking on a role with the Bolsheviks that saw him expropriating property from the bourgeoisie. His rapid re-entry into the world of counterintelligence and his promotion to deputy head of the Cheka in Georgia marked a significant escalation in his influence and power. Throughout these tumultuous years, Beria's personal life continued to unfold in the shadow of his growing political stature. His marriage to Nina Gegechkori and the birth of his son, Sergo, occurred amidst a whirlwind of rumors and controversy, reflecting the complexity and often brutal nature of the times. As the Soviet Union grappled with its internal structure and the fate of the Transcaucasian states, Beria, alongside Stalin, pushed for a complete integration of their homeland under Moscow's rule. This position set them at odds with Lenin, who had advocated for a semi-independent status for Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia within the Soviet framework. The deteriorating health of Lenin, marked by multiple strokes and his eventual death in January 1924, created a power vacuum that Stalin was quick to fill. As General Secretary of the Communist Party, Stalin's ascent to the helm of the USSR was nearly assured, setting the stage for a regime that would leave an indelible mark on the 20th century. As the political landscape of the Soviet Union continued to evolve and solidify under the iron grip of the Bolshevik regime, Lavrentiy Beria's ascent within this system became increasingly marked by a series of brutal yet politically astute maneuvers. His relocation to Tbilisi in Georgia, just as anti-Soviet activities surged, positioned him at the forefront of the Bolsheviks' merciless crackdown on dissent. Beria's role in arresting and executing counter-revolutionaries was not just a testament to his personal ruthlessness, but also reflective of the broader Bolshevik strategy of absolute dominance. The persecution and eventual purge of the Menshevik Party in Georgia, once leniently treated due to their historical ties with Bolshevik leaders, underscored a new era under Stalin's rule, one where no opposition, however slight or historical, could be tolerated. In the midst of this political carnage, Beria's methods grew increasingly sinister and effective. His autobiography claims a desire to return to academic pursuits, yet his actions spoke louder, illustrating a man deeply entrenched in the violent suppression of any form of resistance. His approach was not just about physical elimination, but also psychological warfare, as seen in his deceptive negotiations with rebel leaders during the 1924 uprising. Beria's tactics led to his promotion to head of the secret political division of the Transcaucasian State Political Directive. His role expanded beyond mere enforcement to the orchestration of mass terror, where even the suspicion of subversion warranted execution. Such actions earned him the Order of the Red Banner, a chilling testament to his value within the Bolshevik hierarchy. As Beria's power grew, so did his proximity to Joseph Stalin. The incident involving the plane crash that killed Solomon Mogilevsky, a Trotskyist and potential threat to both Stalin and Beria, highlighted the murky, lethal waters of Soviet political rivalries. The subsequent internal investigation and the lack of evidence against Beria only further cemented his position and his relationship with Stalin. By the mid-1920s, Beria was not just a regional enforcer, but a key player in Soviet-wide security and intelligence, providing services directly to Stalin himself. His promotion to the Joint State Political Directorate and later to the Georgian Central Committee underscored a near decade of ruthless political climbing. Beria's role in suppressing anti-state terrorism and nationalistic sentiments was indicative of the broader Soviet agenda to quash any form of dissent or independence that could undermine the Union's unity. His extensive network within the police, intelligence, and the Kremlin itself made him a formidable and feared figure. His correspondence with figures like Oryonikidze revealed the depth of his involvement in the internal power struggles of the Communist Party, particularly in the context of Trotsky's expulsion and the subsequent purge of his sympathizers. Beria's ability to leverage these situations to further ingratiate himself with the Soviet elite underscored his strategic acumen and relentless pursuit of power. As the 1920s drew to a close, Beria had firmly established himself as a central figure in the Soviet apparatus, a man whose name was synonymous with the brutal enforcement of Bolshevik rule and the personal ambitions that drove him to such lengths. His story is a stark reminder of the personal and political savagery that characterized one of history's most tumultuous and transformative periods. The 1930s marked a period of significant ascent and consolidation of power for Lavrentiy Beria within the Soviet hierarchy. His appointment as the first secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party in 1931 signified a strategic triumph, achieved through a calculated elimination of rivals and a tight grip on the flow of potentially damaging information. This position not only elevated his status, but also granted him extensive control over the police force, effectively bestowing upon him the power to dictate the fates of millions. Beria's rise continued in 1932 with his promotion to first secretary of the Transcaucasian Regional Committee of the All-Union Communist Party of the Bolsheviks. His visibility and influence further increased with his appearance on the front page of the Zarya Vostoka newspaper, where he championed the harsh collectivization policies of the Soviet regime. Under these policies, resistance was met with severe punishment, a tactic Beria was all too familiar with and willing to enforce. His strategy of accusing and discrediting previous leaders like Lavrentiy Kartvelishvili paved the way for a broader purge of Georgian party members, eliminating any internal opposition and consolidating his power base. Over the following years, Beria systematically removed old Bolshevik leaders from influential positions within Georgia, replacing them with allies and sympathizers, all while eyeing higher positions and greater influence within the Soviet apparatus. The Kolkhoz program, aimed at collectivizing agriculture, became another tool in Beria's arsenal. Under his supervision, the program not only restructured agricultural communities, but also served as a means to suppress and exile the kulaks, a class of wealthier peasants. This ruthless approach to collectivization decimated families and communities, uprooting traditional ways of life and replacing them with a system that prioritized state control over individual welfare. Beria's relentless ambition and cunning tactics were further exemplified by his maneuvering against Mamia Orakalashvili, whom he ousted from the position of chief of the Transcaucasian Party. By offering Orakalashvili a demotion disguised as a transfer, Beria cleared his path to assume control over the Georgian party leadership and oversee the entire South Caucasus region. By 1937, Beria's reputation for brutality and effectiveness was well established, leading to his appointment to oversee a purge of the Georgian NKVD. His role in the execution of high-ranking officials accused of anti-Bolshevik activities further cemented his standing as a merciless enforcer of Stalin's will. In 1938, Stalin's recognition of Beria's ruthless efficiency and strategic acumen led to his appointment as a deputy member of the Russian Secret Police, the People's Commissariat for Internal Affairs, later known as the KGB. Beria's meticulous planning and relentless execution of government operations against any form of opposition solidified his position as one of the most feared and powerful figures in the Soviet Union, a man whose name became synonymous with the terror and purges that characterized one of history's most oppressive regimes. During the late 1930s, Lavrentiy Beria's role within the Soviet Union's political landscape became increasingly prominent and ominous as he played a crucial part in Stalin's Great Purge. This period, characterized by widespread terror and systematic eradication of perceived threats to Stalin's power, saw the elimination of a significant portion of the Communist Party's ruling elite, as well as countless public figures and ethnic minorities. Beria's involvement in these purges positioned him as a central figure in one of the darkest chapters of Soviet history. Despite his prominence and power, Beria was not immune to the pervasive fear and paranoia that defined Stalin's inner circle. At one point, he found himself on an NKVD hit list, narrowly escaping execution by appealing directly to Stalin for forgiveness. This incident highlights the precarious nature of power under Stalin, where even the most influential figures lived in constant fear of sudden downfall and death. The Great Purge extended far beyond the political arena, targeting anyone and any group that could potentially challenge the homogeneity and control desired by the Soviet regime. Scientists, engineers, police officers, and various ethnic groups were all victims of this brutal campaign, as Stalin sought to eliminate any vestiges of private property, cultural diversity, nationalistic sentiments, and independent thought. The motivations behind Stalin's purges have been the subject of much debate among historians. Some argue that the purges were primarily a tool for consolidating personal power, while others, like historian Stephen Kotkin, suggest that Stalin and his followers were genuine believers in communism, viewing the purges as necessary steps towards rapidly modernizing the Soviet Union and protecting it from external threats like Nazi Germany. Regardless of the exact motivation, the purges undoubtedly served both to eliminate opposition and to fortify Stalin's and Beria's positions of power. Beria's rise reached a new peak in December 1938, when he was appointed the head of the NKVD, succeeding Nikolai Yezhov. Under Beria's leadership, Yezhov was removed from office and executed, along with his family members and close associates. This ruthless act further solidified Beria's reputation as a merciless enforcer of Stalin's will. One of the most notorious acts of this era was the assassination of Leon Trotsky in August 1940, orchestrated by the NKVD. Trotsky's death marked the elimination of one of Stalin's most prominent and persistent rivals, demonstrating the global reach and lethal efficiency of the Soviet secret police under Beria's command. Beria's power and influence continued to grow, and by the early 1940s, he was not only the head of the state police, but also the deputy prime minister. His reign was marked by horrific abuses, including the kidnapping, rape, and torture of political enemies. Despite these atrocities, Stalin referred to Beria as our Heinrich Himmler during a meeting with US President Franklin Roosevelt in 1943, drawing a chilling parallel between the NKVD and the SS in Nazi Germany. The international context of the late 1930s also played a significant role in shaping Beria's activities. The conflict between Russia and Japan in 1938, known as the Changkufeng, or Battle of Lake Khasan incident, demonstrated the volatile geopolitical environment of the time. The Soviet victory over Japan in this skirmish and the subsequent treaty effectively shifted Japanese imperialist ambitions towards the Pacific, altering the course of World War II. In this complex web of internal terror and international conflict, Lavrentiy Beria emerged as a figure of immense power and infamy, embodying the ruthless pursuit of control and the brutal suppression of dissent that characterized Stalin's Soviet Union. As World War II raged, Lavrentiy Beria's role within the Soviet regime continued to expand and darken, marked by his involvement in mass deportations, executions, and the management of the vast and brutal Gulag system. His responsibilities encompassed not only the internal suppression of dissent and enforcement of Stalinist policies, but also significant involvement in the Soviet Union's military and geopolitical strategies. Beria played a pivotal role in the mass deportations of Japanese soldiers and other ethnic groups deemed a threat to Soviet security, often resulting in execution or death through harsh conditions. As the Soviet Union sought to create buffer zones between itself and potential enemies, Beria's NKVD was instrumental in carrying out the invasions and subsequent suppressions in the Baltic states, Finland, and parts of Eastern Europe. The infamous Winter War against Finland showcased the harsh realities of Soviet expansionism, with Beria's forces ensuring the loyalty of Bolshevik soldiers through fear and punishment. Despite initial resistance from Finland, the Soviet Union eventually secured territorial gains, furthering its strategic interests in the region. Beria's involvement in the mass execution of Polish officers in the Katyn massacre and the deportation of Polish nationals to Siberia highlighted the extent of his ruthlessness. The systematic elimination of political and military threats under his watch contributed to the consolidation of Soviet power, but also sowed seeds of deep resentment and tragedy. The Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941 marked a turning point in the war and exposed the vulnerabilities of the Red Army, partly due to the earlier purges orchestrated by Stalin and Beria. Despite this initial weakness, Beria was tasked with bolstering the army's resolve, employing political commissars and NKVD agents to maintain discipline and deter desertion. Under Beria's watch, the Soviet Union leveraged its vast resources, industrial base, and population to eventually halt and repel the German advance. The use of gulag labor in war production and the continual purges within the Red Army exemplified Beria's commitment to victory at any cost. As the war progressed, Beria's influence extended to coordinating counterintelligence operations and managing the ethnic cleansing of various groups deemed a threat to Soviet security. His ability to manipulate Stalin's paranoia and neuroses further cemented his position as one of the dictator's most trusted and feared lieutenants. Following the war, Beria's role expanded into overseeing the Soviet atomic program, a top priority given the United States' newfound military advantage. Under his leadership, the program achieved significant milestones, culminating in the successful detonation of the Soviet Union's first atomic bomb in 1949. Despite his instrumental role in the Soviet regime, Beria's ruthless pursuit of power and the widespread hatred he engendered among his peers set the stage for his eventual downfall. Following Stalin's death in 1953, Beria's ambitions to succeed the dictator were thwarted by a collective leadership wary of another reign of terror. Ultimately, Beria's past caught up with him, and he was arrested, charged with various crimes, and executed. His legacy remains one of brutality, fear, and an unwavering dedication to the consolidation of power, reflecting the dark complexities of the Stalinist Soviet Union and the relentless machinery of its political system.